The morning alarm pierced through the recycled air of mining station Kepler 442b, like a rusty knife through silence. Sarah Chen rubbed her tired eyes and rolled off her narrow bunk, her feet hitting the cold metal floor with a dull thud. Another day of extracting rare minerals from the asteroid belt. Another day of pretending the constant hum of life support systems didn't drive her slowly insane. She pulled on her standard-issue coveralls and made her way to the observation deck, clutching a steaming cup of synthetic coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. The view never failed to amaze her, even after 3 years stationed on this remote outpost. Stars scattered across the darkness like diamonds on black velvet, with the pale blue dot of Earth barely visible in the distance. But today, something was different. A massive shadow moved across the starfield, blocking out entire constellations as it drifted closer to their station. Sarah squinted through the reinforced viewport, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The shadow had substance, texture, and what looked like scales. "Control, this is Chen on Observation Deck 7. She spoke into her comm unit. "We've got an unidentified object approaching from Sector 12. It's big. Really big." Static crackled before Commander Martinez's voice came through. "Define big, Chen." Sarah pressed her face against the cold glass, watching as more details became visible. The creature was easily the size of a small moon, with wings that stretched beyond her field of view. Its hide was pale white, almost translucent in places, and covered in what appeared to be centuries of space debris. Asteroids, broken ship hulls, and cosmic dust clung to its massive form like barnacles on an ancient whale. "Sir, I think it's alive, and it's heading straight for us." The comm channel exploded with chatter as other crew members confirmed the sighting. Sarah watched in fascination as the being slowly turned its enormous head toward their station. Eyes the size of cargo bays opened, revealing swirling galaxies of ancient intelligence. When it spoke, the words somehow bypassed their communication systems and resonated directly in their minds. "Greetings, small builders of metal homes among the stars. I am Valthros, guardian of the void reaches. Your species intrigues me." Sarah stumbled backward, nearly dropping her coffee. The voice was like listening to solar winds made audible, old beyond measure and filled with cosmic loneliness. Around her, other crew members had gathered at the viewports, their faces pressed against the glass in wonder and terror. "I have drifted through the dark between stars for 8,000 of your years," the ancient dragon continued, its mental voice touching each of them individually. "I have watched civilizations rise and fall like brief candle flames. I have seen species reach for the stars only to burn themselves out in wars and greed. But you humans, you are different." Commander Martinez's voice came through the intercom, shaky but professional. "All hands, this is not a drill. We have first contact with an unknown alien entity. Maintain positions and await instructions." The dragon's massive head tilted, and Sarah could have sworn she saw amusement in those galaxy-deep eyes. "Your leader speaks with authority but fear. Tell him I mean no harm to your floating metal nest. I have come because I smell something upon you that I have not encountered in millennia." Sarah found her voice, though it came out as barely a whisper. "What do you smell?" "Hope," Valthros replied simply. Pure, undiluted hope mixed with stubborn determination. Most species that reach the stars carry the bitter scent of conquest or the sour tang of desperation. But you small creatures, you still believe in tomorrow. The dragon's enormous form began a slow rotation, and Sarah realized it was examining their station from every angle. Space debris fell away from its hide like snow, revealing scales that shimmered with their own inner light. Each scale was larger than their shuttle bay, and covered in intricate patterns that seemed to shift and move when observed directly. "I have been alone so long," the dragon continued, its mental voice carrying an ocean of sadness. "The last of my kind died when your son was young. I have forgotten the sound of another's voice, the warmth of companionship. I exist now only to guard the ancient pathways between stars, to ensure safe passage for those who travel with peaceful intent." Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. The loneliness in that voice was overwhelming, a cosmic solitude that stretched across geological ages. Without thinking, she pressed her palm against the viewport. "You're not alone anymore," she said softly. The dragon's massive head snapped toward her position with surprising speed. Those ancient eyes focused on the tiny human figure behind the reinforced glass, and Sarah felt a gentle pressure in her mind as Valthros examined her thoughts. "You would offer friendship to one such as I? A being who could crush your entire station without effort? I am older than your species' written history. More powerful than your greatest weapons. What could you possibly gain from such an alliance? Sarah smiled, thinking of her grandmother's stories about adopting stray cats. Maybe we both gain something we've been missing. You've been alone for 8,000 years. We've been trying to find our place in a universe that seems too big and empty. Maybe we're exactly what each other needs. The silence stretched for long moments, broken only by the hum of life support systems and the nervous breathing of her crewmates. Then slowly a sound began to build around them. It started as a low rumble that seemed to come from the station's hull itself, growing in complexity until Sarah realized what she was hearing. The dragon was laughing. It was a sound like stars being born, like the music of solar winds and the whisper of gravitational waves. It filled the station with warmth and joy, washing away the sterile loneliness of their metal home among the stars. Small human, with the large heart, Velthro said when the laughter faded, you may have just saved both our species. But first, there is something I must address, something that has become rather pressing after so many centuries in the void. The dragon's massive form shifted and Sarah caught sight of something that made her gasp. Covering every inch of the creature's pale hide was layer upon layer of cosmic grime, space dust, and what appeared to be the fossilized remains of countless microorganisms. The great guardian of the void was quite simply incredibly dirty. I believe, Velthro said with what sounded like embarrassment, it may be time for what you humans call a bath. The crew of mining station Kepler 442b stared in stunned silence as the implications of Velthro's request sank in. Sarah Chen found herself doing rapid calculations in her head, trying to figure out how one might even begin to clean a creature the size of a small moon. The dragon's hide was covered in what appeared to be thousands of years of accumulated cosmic debris, from microscopic space dust to chunks of asteroids that had somehow become embedded in the ancient scales. Sir? Sarah spoke into her comm unit, her voice steady despite the surreal situation. I think we need to call a team meeting. Within minutes. The station's conference room was packed with every available crew member. Commander Martinez stood at the head of the table, his usually composed demeanor showing cracks of bewilderment. Chief Engineer Rodriguez pulled up holographic displays showing the dragon's massive form, while xenobiologist Dr. Kim frantically took notes on her tablet. All right, people, Martinez began, running a hand through his graying hair. I never thought I'd be saying this, but we need to figure out how to give a bath to an 8,000-year-old alien dragon. Ideas! The room erupted in nervous chatter. Some crew members suggested using the station's industrial cleaning systems, while others wondered if they should contact Earth Command for guidance. Sarah raised her hand for silence. Has anyone considered that this might be bigger than just hygiene? She asked. Think about it. Velthro has been alone for millennia, carrying all that accumulated stuff. Maybe this is about more than getting clean. Maybe it's about letting go of the past. Dr. Kim looked up from her notes, excitement gleaming in her eyes. Sarah might be onto something. In many Earth cultures, ritual cleansing represents renewal, rebirth, starting fresh. If we approach this right, we might be witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history. Outside the conference room, Velthro waited with infinite patience, his massive form casting shadows across their solar collectors. Through the station's communication system, his ancient voice reached them again. Small friends, I sense your deliberations. Know that what I ask has never been attempted. No being has shown me such kindness in eons beyond counting. I have grown so accustomed to my condition that I had forgotten what it meant to be truly clean. Chief Rodriguez stood up, his engineer's mind already working through the logistics. The thermal regulation system in Section 7 could be modified to generate steam fields. If we reroute power from non-essential systems, we might be able to create enough hot water to make a difference. What about cleaning agents? Asked Dr. Kim. We can't use anything that might harm him. His biology is completely unknown to us. Sarah smiled, remembering her grandmother's gentle wisdom. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the best. Just hot water, maybe some mild soap from the medical bay, nothing harsh or artificial. As the crew threw themselves into planning, something remarkable happened. The usual complaints about overtime, about the tedious routine of mining operations, about being stuck on a remote station light years from home, simply vanished. Everyone worked with a purpose and energy that Sarah hadn't seen since their first week on station. Within hours, they had a plan. The mining lasers would be carefully recalibrated to gently heat sections of Valthros's hide, while the station's water recycling system worked overtime to produce massive quantities of clean, warm water. The cargo bay doors would open to allow their construction mechs to maneuver outside, equipped with modified cleaning tools scaled up to dragon-sized proportions. But first, they needed Valthros's consent for every step. "Great Guardian," Sarah spoke through the communication array, "we have a proposal, but we need your permission. This will require us to work directly on your person. Are you comfortable with that level of contact?" The dragon's response carried overtones of wonder and gratitude that made several crew members wipe their eyes. "Small Sarah Chen, in 8 millennia no being has asked for my consent for anything. They have either fled in terror or attacked in foolish aggression. You treat me with dignity I had forgotten I possessed. Yes, I give my consent. More than that, I give you my trust." The first phase began with the mining lasers set to their lowest power setting, gently warming a section of the dragon's massive flank. Centuries of accumulated ice and frozen gases began to sublimate, creating spectacular clouds of vapor that caught and reflected the light of distant stars. As the warmth penetrated deeper, something extraordinary happened. The embedded asteroids and debris didn't just fall away, they seemed to dissolve, as if they had never been truly attached but held in place by some other force. Dr. Kim frantically recorded everything, her scientific mind racing to understand the phenomenon. "It's like the dirt and debris were held by some kind of psychic weight," she reported to the crew, as if his emotional state somehow manifested physically. The loneliness, the isolation, it literally weighed him down. Valthros's mental voice confirmed her theory. "Wise small doctor, you understand what others have not. The weight I carry is not merely physical. Each piece of debris represents a year of solitude, a moment of forgotten connection. As you cleanse my hide, you cleanse my spirit as well." The process was slow and meditative. Sarah found herself outside the station in a maintenance suit, operating one of the modified cleaning mechs. The warm water created rainbow prisms in the vacuum of space before instantly freezing into glittering ice crystals. Each section they cleaned revealed scales that shimmered with an inner light, like opals made from starlight itself. As they worked, Valthros began to share stories. Tales of ancient civilizations that had touched the stars briefly before fading into cosmic dust. Descriptions of nebulae being born, of planets cooling from molten rock into worlds capable of supporting life. His voice carried the weight of witnessed history, of being the universe's memory keeper. "I have seen your species' home planet from afar," he told them as they cleaned around his massive shoulder. "Blue and green and perfect, wrapped in clouds like a jewel in cotton. I've watched your first tentative steps beyond your atmosphere, your brave pioneers pushing into the unknown. You're so young, so full of potential." Sarah paused in her work, struck by a sudden realization. "Valthros, you've been watching us grow up, haven't you? Like a grandfather watching his grandchildren take their first steps." The dragon's massive head turned toward her, those galaxy-deep eyes focusing on her tiny, suited figure. "Perhaps that is what I have become without realizing it. The universe's grandfather, watching over the young species as they learn to walk among the stars. But grandparents should not be distant observers. They should be part of the family." As the cleaning continued, more of the crew volunteered for external duty. The station buzzed with activity and purpose unlike anything they had experienced. They were no longer just miners extracting resources from dead rocks. They were part of something greater, something that would echo through galactic history. When the first day's work was complete, they had managed to clean roughly 1% of Valthros's massive form. But the change was already dramatic. The cleaned scales blazed with inner light, and the dragon's mental voice carried a lightness that hadn't been there before. "My friends," Valthros said as they secured their equipment for the night, "I feel something I had thought lost forever. I feel hope." 3 weeks into the Great Cleaning Project, mining station Kepler 442b had transformed into something unprecedented in human space exploration. What had begun as a simple mining operation had become the focal point of the most significant first contact event in galactic history. News of the ancient dragon had spread throughout human space, and supply ships arrived daily with volunteers, xenobiologists, and enough cleaning supplies to scrub a small planet. Sarah Chen stood in the newly designated Dragon Communication Center, watching the latest batch of volunteers' orientation through the viewport. Scientists from Earth's most prestigious universities rubbed shoulders with miners, janitors, teachers, and artists. All had come to help with what the media had dubbed the Great Bath. "It's incredible," Dr. Kim said, joining Sarah at the observation window. "We've got marine biologists who work with whales, professional building cleaners, even a master of ancient Japanese bathing ceremonies. Humanity's answer to the unknown isn't fear or conquest. It's rolling up our sleeves and asking, how can we help?" Outside, Valthros had positioned himself to allow maximum access to his massive form. Scaffolding systems had been constructed along his flanks, and dozens of humans in environmental suits worked methodically across his hide. The dragon remained perfectly still during cleaning sessions, understanding that his smallest movement could endanger the tiny beings working so diligently on his behalf. The cleaning process had evolved into something resembling an art form. Teams specialized in different types of debris. Some focused on the crystallized atmospheric gases that formed intricate patterns between his scales, while others worked on the larger chunks of embedded asteroids. Each section revealed new wonders as centuries of accumulated space dust gave way to scales that seemed to contain entire star systems. Valthros, Sarah spoke through the communication system during their daily chat. "Can you tell us about your scales? They're unlike anything we've ever seen." The dragon's mental voice carried warmth and amusement.
"They are memories made manifest, small friend.
"Each scale contains the light of stars I have visited, the essence of worlds I have protected. When my kind lived, we collected experiences as your people collect photographs. Now I am the last gallery of wonders that no longer exist." This revelation had sent the xenobiologists into excited frenzies. They discovered that each clean scale told a story. Some contained the light patterns of dead stars. Others held what appeared to be crystallized music from long-extinct civilizations. Dr. Kim established strict protocols to ensure nothing was damaged during the cleaning process. But perhaps the most remarkable change was in the dragon himself. As more of his hide was cleaned, Valthros became increasingly talkative and engaged. The ancient loneliness that had weighted his voice began to lift, replaced by something that sounded remarkably like joy. "I had forgotten," he told them one day as a team worked on cleaning around his massive eye, "what it feels like to be touched with kindness. For 8,000 years, my only contact with other beings was through fear or aggression. You humans approach me with soap and warm water, with gentle hands and patient hearts. You make me remember what it means to be cared for." The work had its challenges. Several times embedded debris proved too difficult to remove without potentially harming Valthros, requiring the development of new techniques. A particularly stubborn cluster of metallic objects near his shoulder joint had resisted all their efforts until Dr. Martinez, a newcomer from Earth's deep-sea exploration program, suggested a technique used for cleaning whale barnacles. "We don't force it," she explained to the gathered teams. "We create conditions where it wants to let go. Gentle heat, patient soaking, and respect for the natural process." The technique worked beautifully. As they applied warm, mineral-rich water to the area, using a formula Dr. Kim had developed based on the composition of ancient hot springs, the metallic objects began to dissolve. But rather than simply falling away, they transformed into streams of liquid light that flowed down the dragon's flanks like glowing tears. "Those were my grief made solid," Valthros explained softly. "The sorrow of being the last of my kind crystallized over millennia. You do not merely clean my body, you heal my soul." Word of these transformations spread beyond human space. Other species began sending representatives to observe, then to help. The Andromedans contributed their expertise with crystalline structures, while the Cetians offered advanced water purification techniques. What had begun as a human endeavor had become a truly galactic effort. Sarah found herself appointed as the unofficial liaison between Valthros and the growing community of helpers. During their daily conversations, she began to understand the true scope of what they were undertaking. The dragon wasn't just an individual. He was a living library, a keeper of cosmic history, and perhaps the key to understanding humanity's place in the greater galactic community. "Tell me about my people," Sarah asked one day as she worked on cleaning a particularly intricate section of scales near his neck. "What do you see in us that's different from other species?" Valthros was quiet for a long moment, considering his words carefully. "Most species that reach the stars do so driven by need. They have exhausted their homeworld's resources. or they flee some great catastrophe, or they seek to conquer new territories. But humans, you reached for the stars because you dreamed of touching them. Even now, when you encounter something as alien and potentially dangerous as myself, your first instinct is to help, to connect, to understand. He paused as a team of volunteers worked on loosening a chunk of crystallized comet ice from between two massive scales. Your species has maintained something most lose in their journey to the stars: your empathy, your curiosity, your willingness to care for others without expecting anything in return. You clean an ancient dragon not because you must, but because you believe it is right to do so. As the weeks passed, the project took on a life of its own. Artists created works inspired by the patterns revealed on the cleaned scales. Musicians composed symphonies based on the harmonic frequencies that seemed to emanate from Vilthros's purified hide. Children from across human space sent drawings and messages of encouragement. The dragon treasured each gesture. He had special sections of his consciousness dedicated to storing every human kindness, every gentle touch, every moment of connection. After millennia of solitude, he was building a new collection, not of cosmic wonders and stellar phenomena, but of small acts of love and care from a species barely out of its planetary cradle. "I understand now," Vilthros said as they completed cleaning his massive left wing. "Why the universe created your species. You are the antidote to cosmic loneliness. You are the answer to the question of whether intelligence inevitably leads to isolation. Through you, the universe learns to care for itself." Sarah smiled as she guided her cleaning mech along the newly revealed wing membrane, which sparkled like stained glass made from aurora light. They were more than halfway finished with the great cleaning now, and already the transformation was stunning. But she suspected the real transformation wasn't happening to the dragon's hide. It was happening to everyone who participated, creating bonds between species that had never imagined they could work together toward a common goal. In cleaning an ancient dragon, humanity had accidentally discovered the secret to galactic unity. Sometimes the greatest adventures begin with the simple desire to help someone feel better. 2 months into the Great Bath Project, something unprecedented occurred that would reshape galactic politics forever. The hegemony of Sarn, a militaristic alliance that controlled nearly a quarter of the known galaxy, dispatched a war fleet to mining station Kepler 442b, with demands that Vilthros submit to their authority or face destruction. Sarah Chen watched from the command center as the sleek, predatory shapes of Sarn warships dropped out of hyperspace. Their hulls were black as void, bristling with weapons that could crack planets. The lead vessel, a massive dreadnought called the Inevitable Conquest, immediately began broadcasting demands in 17 different languages. "Ancient creature," the Sarn commander's voice crackled through the communication channels. "You will accompany us to the Sarn homeworld for study and integration into our forces. Resistance will result in your termination and the destruction of these human facilities." The cleaning work stopped immediately as volunteers retreated to safe positions, but Vilthros remained perfectly calm, his massive form floating serenely in the space between the station and the approaching fleet. When he spoke, his mental voice carried an authority that seemed to make the stars themselves pause and listen. "Fleet Commander Zexhai of the Sarn," the dragon's voice resonated through every ship in the area, apparently bypassing their communication systems entirely. "I know your species. I was ancient when your people first crawled from the radioactive seas of your birth world. I watched you conquer your neighbors, enslave your enemies, and spread your particular brand of cruelty across 12 star systems. You mistake power for strength and you confuse fear for respect." The Sarn commander's response was swift and brutal. "You will obey, relic, or burn with these human insects. All weapons target the creature. Prepare to fire on my command." What happened next would be remembered as the moment humanity truly announced its presence on the galactic stage. Sarah watched in amazement as every human ship in the system, from massive supply vessels to tiny personal shuttles, moved to position themselves between the Sarn fleet and Vilthros. They were hopelessly outgunned, their civilian vessels no match for military dreadnoughts. But not a single ship retreated. Commander Martinez's voice rang out across all channels. "This is Commander Luis Martinez of Earth Mining Consortium Station Kepler 442b. The being you threaten is under human protection. Any hostile action against Vilthros will be considered an act of war against Earth and all her colonies." The Sarn commander's laugh was like breaking glass. "Humans, A species barely capable of interplanetary flight dares to threaten the Sarn hegemony? You have 40 ships. We have 400. Stand aside or be obliterated. Numbers aren't everything, Sarah found herself saying into the comm, her voice steady despite her terror. Sometimes what matters is being on the right side of history. But it was Vilethros who ended the standoff in a way no one could have predicted. The ancient dragon began to glow with an inner light that grew steadily brighter. The cleaned portions of his hide blazed like captured stars, while the areas still covered in cosmic debris began to crack and shed their accumulated weight at an accelerating pace. Commander HFY, Vilethros spoke with a voice like solar thunder. You have made a grave error. You threaten not just my person, but the first species in 8 millennia to show me genuine kindness, the first beings to care for me without seeking to use me for their own ends. This I will not tolerate. The dragon's massive wings spread wide, each one larger than the Sarn dreadnought. As they did, space itself seemed to ripple around him. Stars in the distance began to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, and several of the smaller asteroids in the area simply disappeared. I am Vilethros the Memory Keeper, last of the Void Dragons, guardian of the ancient ways. I have spent 8,000 years learning the deepest secrets of space and time. I know the location of every black hole, every stellar nursery, every spatial anomaly in this galaxy. I can open doorways between distant stars, collapse hyperspace lanes, or redirect solar winds to scour planets clean of life. I am not some beast to be captured and enslaved. The Sarn fleet hesitated, their sensors registering energy readings that shouldn't have been possible. But Commander HFY was too arrogant to back down. Impressive light show, creature. But you are still one against many. Fire all weapons. The barrage that followed was tremendous. Enough concentrated firepower to destroy a medium-sized moon. Energy beams and kinetic projectiles tore through space toward Vilethros and the human ships protecting him. Sarah closed her eyes, certain this was the end. When she opened them again, she gasped. Vilethros had moved with impossible speed for something so massive, his body now completely shielding the human vessels. The Sarn weapons struck his hide and simply stopped. The energy beams were absorbed into his scales like water soaking into sand, while the physical projectiles bounced harmlessly off his ancient armor. My turn, the dragon said simply. What followed was not a battle, it was a demonstration. Vilethros didn't attack the Sarn ships directly. Instead, he began to sing. The sound started as a low harmonic that seemed to come from the space around them, building in complexity until reality itself vibrated in sympathy. One by one, the Sarn warships simply ceased to function. Their weapons powered down, their engines went silent, their life support systems stuttered and failed. The crews found themselves trapped in vessels that had become elaborate metal coffins floating in the void. I do not kill unless I must, Vilethros explained as the enemy fleet drifted helplessly. But I will not allow harm to come to those who have shown me such kindness. Commander HFY, you have two choices. You may take your fleet and leave this system immediately, with the understanding that any future aggression against humans will result in the complete collapse of all hyperspace routes leading to Sarn territory. Or you may remain here and experience the gradual failure of every system keeping you alive. The choice was not difficult. Within minutes, the Sarn fleet was limping away at sublight speeds, their faster-than-light drives somehow completely inoperative. As they retreated, Vilethros' voice followed them. Spread word throughout your hegemony. The humans are under the protection of powers you do not understand and cannot defeat. They are no longer to be threatened or harmed. This is not a request. When the enemy's ships finally vanished beyond sensor range, an enormous cheer went up from every human vessel. Sarah found herself crying with relief and pride as she watched their volunteer fleet reform around Vilethros. They had faced down one of the galaxy's great military powers and won, not through superior firepower, but through the courage to stand by their principles. My dear friends, Vilethros said, his mental voice warm with affection, you risked everything to protect me. Species that barely know me chose to stand between me and destruction, rather than abandon me to my enemies. This is why you will inherit the galaxy, not because you are the strongest or the smartest, but because you understand that some things are worth dying for. Dr. Kim's voice came over the comm from her research station. Vilethros, those energy readings we detected, what you did to their ships, how is that possible? The dragon's amusement was evident in his reply. Dear doctor, I am a creature who has spent 8 millennia studying the fundamental forces of the universe. I know how to listen to the music of quantum strings, how to persuade gravity to bend in new directions, how to convince matter and energy to dance to melodies older than your sun. Your people call these things impossible, but they are simply songs you have not yet learned to sing. Sarah smiled as she watched the cleaning teams begin to emerge from their shelters, ready to resume their work. The Sarn fleet's attack had been terrifying, but it had also proved something important. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their numbers. It was their willingness to do what was right, even when it seemed impossible. I think, she said into her communicator, it's time to get back to work. We still have a dragon to finish cleaning. As the volunteers returned to their stations and the Great Bath resumed, word of the confrontation began spreading through galactic communication networks. Other species watched in amazement as the young human race faced down a major military power to protect an ancient being they had known for mere months. The message was clear. Humanity had announced itself not as conquerors or exploiters, but as protectors and friends. The universe had been waiting 8,000 years for someone to care for Valthros. Now it was beginning to understand that humanity's gift to the galaxy might be something far more precious than advanced technology or military might. It was the simple, revolutionary concept that everyone deserved kindness, regardless of how different they might be. The aftermath of the Sarn confrontation transformed mining station Kepler 442b into something resembling the galaxy's first interspecies embassy. Representatives from dozens of civilizations arrived daily, drawn not by fear of human military might, but by curiosity about a species willing to risk annihilation to protect a friend. Sarah Chen found herself appointed as the unofficial ambassador to what was becoming known throughout galactic communication networks as the Cleansing. As Valthros's bath entered its 4th month, the ancient dragon's transformation had become nothing short of miraculous. Nearly 70% of his massive form now gleamed with inner starlight, each scale a work of art that seemed to contain entire nebulae. But the most remarkable change was in his demeanor. Where once his mental voice had carried the weight of cosmic loneliness, now it rang with joy and curiosity about each new day. Sarah, my dear friend, Valthros said as she worked on cleaning a particularly stubborn section near his massive shoulder joint. I must share something with you. For 8 millennia, I have existed in a state of what your people might call hibernation. My consciousness remained active, but my deeper functions had essentially shut down to conserve energy and cope with the isolation. But now I feel myself truly awakening for the first time in ages. The implications of this revelation sent waves of excitement through the scientific community. Dr. Kim had established a permanent research station dedicated to studying the dragon's biology, and her findings were rewriting textbooks across the galaxy. Valthros's scales weren't just decorative, they were organs of incredible sophistication, capable of processing energy from various stellar phenomena and converting it into forms of matter and information that defied current understanding. But perhaps the most significant discovery came when a young linguist named Thomas Park noticed patterns in the way the cleaned scales reflected light. Working with a team of cryptographers and xenolinguists, he realized that Valthros's hide was literally covered in writing. Each scale contained vast libraries of information about extinct civilizations, lost technologies, and cosmic phenomena that had never been recorded by any other species. Valthros, Sarah asked during one of their daily conversations, are you aware that your scales contain written information? The dragon's massive eye turned toward her, and she caught a flicker of something that might have been embarrassment. You have discovered my secret shame. Yes, dear Sarah, I am what your people might call a compulsive chronicler. Every civilization I encountered, every wonder I witnessed, every beautiful moment or tragic ending, I recorded it all in my scales. I am, quite literally, a living history of the galaxy. Dr. Kim nearly dropped her equipment in excitement. Do you realize what this means? You're not just an individual. You're a mobile library containing millions of years of galactic history, civilizations we thought were lost forever, technologies that could advance every species in the galaxy, answers to questions we didn't even know how to ask. And now, Valthros said with gentle humor, thanks to your thorough cleaning, all of that information is becoming readable again. The cosmic dust and debris weren't just making me dirty. They were obscuring the greatest library the galaxy has ever known. The revelation changed everything. What had begun as an act of kindness had become the most significant archaeological discovery in galactic history. Species that had been enemies for centuries found themselves working side by side to help decode the information hidden in Velthros's scales. The dragon, delighted by the renewed interest in his collected memories, became an enthusiastic teacher and storyteller. Here, he would say, directing their attention to a cluster of scales near his left wing, are the mathematical proofs developed by the crystalline minds of Vega Prime. They solved the problem of faster-than-light communication 3 million years before your species discovered fire. And there, along my spine, you will find the complete cultural records of the singing forests of Kepler 438b, including their method for growing spacecraft from modified trees. Each revelation brought new delegations of scientists and scholars. The Andromedans sent their finest mathematicians to study the crystalline mind equations. The aquatic Cetians were fascinated by records of the deep dwellers, an ocean civilization that had somehow achieved spaceflight without ever leaving their water world. Even species that had been considered too xenophobic for galactic cooperation began sending observers. Sarah found herself at the center of it all, serving as translator not just between species, but between Velthros's ancient perspective and the younger civilizations eager to learn from him. During one particularly intense session, as teams worked to decode what appeared to be a complete map of stable wormhole networks throughout the galaxy, she realized something profound was happening. "We're not just cleaning you," she said to Velthros during a quiet moment. "We're helping you become who you were always meant to be." The dragon's response carried depths of emotion that brought tears to her eyes. "Why, Sarah, you understand what I am only now beginning to see. For 8 millennia, I thought I was merely existing, waiting for my inevitable end as the last of my kind. But perhaps I was actually preparing for this moment, becoming a bridge between the ancient galaxy and the new, civilizations emerging among the stars. The cleaning process had evolved far beyond its original scope. Teams of specialists worked on different sections simultaneously, each focused on particular types of information. Archaeologists decoded historical records, while engineers studied technological specifications that could revolutionize galactic civilization. Artists and musicians worked to preserve the aesthetic achievements of lost cultures, creating galleries and concert halls on the station to share their findings. But the most remarkable development was how the different species began to cooperate. Traditional enemies found common ground in their shared fascination with ancient mysteries. The warlike Zephyrians worked alongside the pacifist Harmony Collective to decode military histories and peace treaties from civilizations that had solved the problem of perpetual warfare. Trade networks that had been closed for centuries reopened as species shared their discoveries and insights. "I am witnessing something I never thought possible," Velthros told the assembled teams one day as they worked on a particularly complex section of scales that contained what appeared to be a complete guide to terraforming technology. "The young species of this galaxy are learning to see beyond their differences. They are discovering that knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied, and that cooperation yields far greater rewards than competition." The dragon's words proved prophetic when the hegemony of Sarn, the same militaristic alliance that had threatened them months earlier, sent an official diplomatic mission requesting permission to participate in the project. Their representative, a scarred veteran named Commander Tekhai, stood before the assembled delegates with obvious discomfort. "My people," she said haltingly, "have spent centuries believing that strength comes only from conquest and domination. But we have watched your cleaning project with growing interest. The knowledge being revealed could benefit all species, including our own. We wish to contribute to this effort, not as conquerors, but as students." The request sparked intense debate among the other species. Many remembered the Sarn's history of aggression and exploitation, but it was Sarah who spoke up for giving them a chance. "If we're going to build a better galaxy," she said, addressing the assembly, "we need to be willing to believe that everyone can change, everyone can grow. The Sarn are asking to learn alongside us, not to dominate us. Isn't that exactly what we hope for from this entire project?" Velthros's approval was evident in his warm, mental voice. "The human speaks with wisdom beyond her years. Yes, let the Sarn join our great endeavor. Perhaps in learning about the past, they will discover new possibilities for their future." The Sarn delegation was accepted, though with careful monitoring. To everyone's surprise, they proved to be remarkably effective contributors. Their military discipline and attention to detail made them excellent at the painstaking work of scale cleaning, while their advanced weapons technology, when repurposed, created some of the most effective cleaning tools the project had seen. As the 5th month of the Great Bath began, Sarah stood on the observation deck and marveled at what they had accomplished. The space around Valthros buzzed with activity as hundreds of beings from dozens of species worked together with unprecedented cooperation. The dragon himself had become a center of learning and diplomacy, his ancient wisdom helping to mediate disputes, and his vast knowledge inspiring new collaborations, turned entire planets into gardens. I think we've accidentally started something much bigger than giving a dragon a bath. Dr. Kim smiled, her eyes reflecting the rainbow light emanating from Valthros's cleaned scales. I don't think it was an accident at all. I think the universe has been waiting 8,000 years for someone to care enough about an old, lonely dragon to give him the cleaning he needed. And in doing so, we've given the galaxy something it needed too, a reason to work together toward something. The 6th month of the Great Bath brought an unexpected crisis that would test everything they had built together. Deep within the most heavily encrusted section of Valthros's hide, an area around his chest that had resisted all cleaning attempts, something began to stir. Energy readings spiked beyond anything their instruments could measure, and the ancient dragon's usually calm demeanor shifted to something approaching panic. My friends, Valthros's mental voice carried urgent worry. You must cease all cleaning operations immediately. There is something within the accumulated debris that should not be disturbed, something I had hoped would remain buried forever. Sarah Chen rushed to the command center where Dr. Kim was frantically analyzing the energy signatures. The readings were unlike anything in their databases, chaotic, aggressive, and growing stronger by the hour. Whatever lay beneath centuries of cosmic dust was beginning to wake up. Valthros, what is it? Sarah asked through the communication array. What's trapped in there? The dragon's hesitation was telling. For the first time since they had known him, the ancient being seemed genuinely afraid. 8,000 years ago, during the final war that destroyed my people, I was forced to contain something terrible. A weapon of unimaginable destructive power, created by a species so consumed with hatred that they would rather destroy the galaxy than share it with others. I thought it had died with me during my long isolation, but your cleaning has reawakened it. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembled teams. Representatives from every major galactic civilization gathered in emergency session aboard the station, their earlier cooperation strained by fear of the unknown threat. Some demanded immediate evacuation, while others insisted on trying to help neutralize whatever was emerging from the dragon's hide. Commander Theghai of the Sarn surprised everyone by being among the first to volunteer for whatever dangerous work lay ahead. My people owe a debt to this creature and to the humans who protected him, she declared. We will not flee when our new allies face danger. But it was the youngest member of their team who provided the breakthrough they needed. Tommy Nguyen, a 19-year-old engineering student who had arrived just weeks earlier as part of his university's internship program, had been studying the energy patterns emanating from the contaminated area. During the emergency meeting, he raised his hand hesitantly. Excuse me, he said, his voice shaking slightly. But I think I might know what we're dealing with. The energy signature matches theoretical models for a paradox engine, a device that creates localized reversals of causality. If that's what's trapped in there, then trying to remove it by force could cause a cascade failure that unravels local spacetime. Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments in amazement. How does an undergraduate student know about paradox engines? Those are purely theoretical constructs. Tommy blushed but stood his ground. I wrote my thesis on temporal mechanics and impossible devices. And well, I think the theory might not be so theoretical anymore. If Valthros has been carrying an active paradox engine for 8,000 years, constantly feeding it energy through his own life force to keep it contained, then he's essentially been preventing a localized apocalypse through sheer willpower. The implications were staggering. Valthros had been more than just a lonely guardian wandering the galaxy. He had been a living prison, sacrificing his own freedom to protect everyone else from a weapon that could literally undo reality in a localized area. Is that true? Sarah asked the dragon directly. Have you been carrying this burden alone for 8 millennia? Velthros's mental voice was heavy with ancient pain. The destroyers created their ultimate weapon in the final days of the war, believing they could unmake their enemies from history itself. But the device was unstable, threatening to expand beyond their control. In my last battle with their forces, I managed to absorb the engine into my own body, using my natural resistance to temporal effects to contain its influence. I thought the constant exposure to cosmic debris would eventually bury it so deeply that it could never emerge again. But our cleaning disturbed that protection, Dr. Kim said with growing horror. We've been systematically removing the very thing that was keeping a universe-ending weapon contained. The assembled delegates erupted in concerned chatter, with several species representatives already calling for their evacuation fleets. But Sarah felt a different response rising within her. Looking around the room at the faces of beings who had learned to work together over the past months, she saw not just fear, but determination. No, she said firmly, standing to address the assembly. We're not running. We started this project to help Velthros, and we're going to finish it. All of it. If he's been carrying this burden for 8,000 years, then it's time he got some help with that too. Tommy's hand shot up again. Actually, I think there might be a way to safely remove the paradox engine. But it would require perfect coordination between every species here, and we'd need to essentially reverse engineer the containment field while maintaining it at the same time. Commander Thekhai leaned forward, her scarred features intense with interest. Explain. The young engineer moved to the holographic display, his nervousness forgotten in his excitement over the technical challenge. Think of it like performing surgery on a patient who has to remain awake and active throughout the procedure. We need to build a new containment system around the existing one, then gradually transfer the load from Velthros to our artificial system, but the timing has to be perfect. If there's even a microsecond gap in containment, the engine could destabilize and take out everything within several light years. Dr. Kim was already running calculations on her tablet. The power requirements alone would exceed the output of most stellar generators. And the precision needed. We'd need every species' best technology working in perfect synchronization. Then that's what we'll do, Sarah said simply. Velthros has protected us all for 8,000 years. Now it's our turn to protect him. What followed was the most ambitious engineering project in galactic history. Each species contributed their most advanced technology. The Andromedans provided crystalline computation matrices capable of calculations at near light speed. The Cedians contributed their mastery of fluid dynamics to manage the energy flows. And even the recently joined Sarn offered their expertise in containment fields originally designed for their most dangerous weapons. Velthros himself became an active participant in the process, his ancient knowledge of the paradox engine's original design proving crucial to understanding how to safely contain it. Despite the pain it clearly caused him to maintain the containment field while they worked, he never wavered in his support. I have carried this burden in isolation for so long, he told them as they worked, that I had forgotten what it meant to have others share the load. Even if we fail, even if the worst happens, I am grateful beyond measure to face this challenge with friends beside me rather than alone. The work took weeks of careful preparation. Every calculation had to be perfect, every component tested and retested. There would be no second chances. If their attempt to transfer the paradox engine to an artificial containment system failed, the resulting cascade could literally erase their section of the galaxy from existence. But as Sarah watched the teams working together, former enemies sharing their deepest technological secrets, young students collaborating with ancient scholars, beings who had never trusted anyone outside their own, species now betting their lives on the competence of aliens, she felt a quiet confidence growing within. Her humanity had come to the stars carrying one simple belief: that kindness could overcome any obstacle, that cooperation was stronger than conflict, and that no one should have to face their burdens alone. Now, as representatives of dozens of species prepared to risk everything to free an ancient dragon from a prison of his own making, it seemed like the entire galaxy was finally ready to embrace that same philosophy. The final preparations were complete. In 24 hours, they would attempt the impossible, safely extracting a weapon capable of unmaking reality from the body of the last dragon, while every major civilization in the galaxy watched and waited to see if their newfound unity was strong enough to overcome the mistakes of the past. The day of the Paradox engine extraction dawned with an eerie quiet that seemed to stretch across the entire star system. Every ship in the area had been positioned at precisely calculated coordinates, their crews ready to execute the most delicate operation in galactic history. Sarah Chen stood in the primary command center, surrounded by representatives from 43 different species, all working in unprecedented harmony toward a common goal. "Final systems check," announced Dr. Kim, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. "Andromedan computation matrices are online and synchronized. Sadian flow regulators are maintaining optimal energy distribution. Sarn containment fields are stable and ready for transfer protocols." Tommy Nguyen, the young engineer whose theoretical knowledge had made this attempt possible, monitored the energy readings from Valthros's chest area. "The Paradox engine is fully active now," he reported. "The temporal distortions are creating localized time dilation effects. Seconds are passing differently within the containment field. We have a narrow window before the stress becomes too much for Valthros to maintain." The ancient dragon floated in perfect stillness, his massive form stretched across several kilometers of space. Every cleaned scale blazed with inner light, but the area around his chest remained dark, wrapped in swirling clouds of temporal distortion that made it difficult to look at directly. "My friends," Valthros's mental voice reached them, carrying both exhaustion and determination. "I can feel the engine fighting against its bonds. After 8 millennia of dormancy, it hungers to complete its original purpose. You must work quickly, for I do not know how much longer I can contain its fury." Sarah took a deep breath and activated the communication array that connected all participating ships. "This is Sarah Chen, speaking for the Unified Extraction Team. We've all come together from across the galaxy for one purpose: to free our friend from a burden he has carried alone for 8,000 years. Let's bring him home." All teams initiate Phase 1. The first stage involved creating a matrix of artificial containment fields around the area where the Paradox engine was embedded. Ships from different species moved with choreographed precision, their various technologies working in harmony to weave a net of energy that could theoretically hold even a weapon designed to unmake reality. "Containment matrix is forming," reported Commander Thakai from the Sarn flagship. "Our fields are integrating with the other systems. Energy flow is stable." As the artificial containment took shape, something remarkable became visible. The cosmic debris that had hidden the Paradox engine for millennia began to dissolve away, revealing the weapon in its full, terrifying glory. It was a sphere of impossible geometry, its surface shifting between dimensions that human eyes couldn't quite process. Dark energy crackled around it, and space itself seemed to bend and twist in its presence. Phase 2. "Initiate," Sarah commanded, her voice calm despite the horror of what she was seeing. This was the most dangerous part, gradually transferring the containment load from Valthros to their artificial system. If the transition happened too quickly, the engine could break free. Too slowly, and the dragon might collapse from exhaustion before the transfer was complete. "Load transfer beginning," Tommy announced, his hands flying over the controls. "Transferring 1%, 2%. Valthros, how are you holding up?" The dragon's response was strained but resolute. "I can feel the weight lifting, dear friends. For the first time in 8,000 years, I am not carrying this burden alone. Continue." Around the extraction site, teams of specialists monitored every aspect of the operation. The slightest fluctuation in the containment field could spell disaster for everyone within several star systems. But as the minutes passed and the transfer continued steadily, Sarah began to dare to hope. 50% transfer complete, Tommy reported. The artificial matrix is holding steady. Energy readings are within acceptable parameters. But their success was premature. At 70% transfer, the Paradox engine suddenly surged with power, its chaotic energies fighting against both the artificial containment and Valthros's failing strength. Alarms blared across every ship as the weapon began to destabilize. "It's fighting back." Dr. Kim shouted over the warnings. "The engine is trying to break free of both containment systems simultaneously." Space around the weapon began to warp visibly, with some areas aging rapidly while others seemed frozen in time. Several of the smaller ships had to retreat as temporal distortions made their positions untenable. Valthros were losing it, Sarah called out desperately. The ancient dragon's response surprised everyone. Instead of panic or fear, his mental voice carried a profound sense of peace and resolution. No, my dear Sarah, we are not losing anything. We are finally winning. For 8,000 years I have fought this battle alone. But now I understand. The engine feeds on isolation, on the despair of carrying impossible burdens without help. It cannot comprehend what we have built here. With those words, Valthros did something unprecedented. Instead of trying to contain the paradox engine through force and willpower, he opened his mind completely to every being participating in the extraction. His memories, his experiences, his 8 millennia of loneliness and determination flowed into the consciousness of every volunteer. Sarah gasped as the dragon's experiences washed over her. She felt the weight of cosmic solitude, the exhaustion of carrying an impossible burden, but also something else. The incredible joy and hope that had grown within Valthros as he watched different species learn to work together, to care for each other, to choose cooperation over conflict. Across the fleet, similar reactions occurred. Sarn warriors experienced Andromedan mathematical elegance. Cetian scholars felt the fierce protective instincts of Zephyrian defenders. Every participating being briefly became part of a vast interconnected consciousness that stretched across dozens of species and hundreds of ships. The effect on the paradox engine was immediate and dramatic. A weapon designed to exploit division and chaos found itself faced with perfect unity and understanding. Its chaotic energies, which had fed on Valthros's isolation for 8 millennia, suddenly had nothing to sustain them. Transfer complete, Tommy announced in amazement. The artificial containment is holding and the engine is... It's stabilizing. The impossible weapon, deprived of the despair and isolation that had powered it, began to transform. Its chaotic geometry simplified, its dark energies converted into something resembling conventional matter. Within minutes, what had been a universe-threatening weapon became nothing more than an inert sphere of crystallized temporal energy. It's over, Dr. Kim said in wonder. The paradox engine is completely neutralized. Valthros is free. The ancient dragon's joy was like a supernova of pure happiness that touched every mind in the system. Free, he whispered, his mental voice filled with wonder. After 8,000 years, I am finally free. And more than that, I am not alone. The celebration that followed lasted for days. Ships from across the galaxy arrived to witness the completion of the Great Bath and the liberation of the last void dragon, Valthros. His hide, now completely clean and blazing with the light of countless stored memories, became the center of the greatest interspecies festival in galactic history. But for Sarah, the most meaningful moment came during a quiet conversation with the dragon, as the festivities continued around them. Valthros, she said, what will you do now? You're free to go anywhere in the galaxy, to see worlds you haven't visited in millennia. The dragon's massive eye turned toward her, filled with warmth and contentment. Dearest Sarah, I have spent 8,000 years wandering the galaxy alone, seeing wonders that no one else could appreciate, carrying knowledge that no one else could understand. But you and your species have taught me something I had forgotten, that the greatest wonders are not the ones we discover alone, but the ones we share with friends. He paused, his gaze encompassing the diverse fleet of ships surrounding them. I think I would like to stay here if you will have me. Not as a guardian watching from the shadows, but as a teacher, a friend, a member of this remarkable community you have built. For the first time in 8 millennia, I have found something more beautiful than the most magnificent nebula or the birth of a new star. What's that? Sarah asked. Valthros's mental voice carried the warmth of cosmic sunlight. I have found home. As the celebration continued and representatives from dozens of species worked together to establish the first truly galactic cooperative council, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that first morning, when she had spotted a massive shadow moving across the stars. They had set out to give a lonely dragon a bath, and in the process, they had accidentally discovered the secret to galactic unity. Sometimes, she realized the most important journeys begin with the simplest acts of kindness. And sometimes helping someone else get clean is really about helping everyone involved discover who they were meant to be all along. In the months that followed, Mining Station Kepler 442b was transformed into the Valthros Institute for Galactic Cooperation, with the ancient dragon serving as both teacher and symbol of what could be accomplished when different species chose to work together. The knowledge,